Knowing what comp to play is not enough, so that's why I made an opener guide for patch 16.4, because this patch, openers pretty much dictate the entire direction of your game. This patch is super commitment heavy, so you can't really pivot like how you do in other sets. And I hear a lot of complaints all the time, hey, I follow the comps in your tier list, but I don't win with them, or I lose out to this, I lose out to that. But the reason why that's happening is likely because you're not playing it at the right time and not doing the right opener for them. So I made an entire new page on the website, bunnymuffins.lol/openers. And in this video, we're gonna cover all the broken units, how to decide on when to win streak, when to lose streak, what to do in each of those situations, cover some of the generic AD and AP paths, and then lastly, teach you how to play all the forcible augments on stage 2-1. So if you ever just loaded into a game and you're like, what do I do at stage 2-1? This is gonna cover all of that. So first, let's start with the broken openers. If you ever get a good Demacia, Void, or Ionia start, hard force those verticals as much as you can. A good Demacia start could be something like Sona 2, Jarvan 2, then you place 2 items on someone, unlock your Poppy, and go. That usually means you have a 2-star Kog'Maw with 1 other Void unit, and then just some random tank to put in the front. You don't have to win streak from this, but like the 2-star Cog definitely does help, and then you just farm Void right from turn 1. That way you can unlock Rift Herald very easily. And obviously if you have rods are really good in Kai'Sa comps because she needs 3 rods to build Rageblade, Jeweled Gauntlet, and Hextech Gunblade. So that's pretty much when you want to force Void. And then Ionia, if you get 2-star Ionias, it's very easy to play, like 2-star Jhin, 2-star Shen, having a 3 Ionia start. That's when you want to be playing Ionia. Ideally, you have some Yunara items such as Infinity Edge or Rageblade, but that's not mandatory. It's mainly just getting the upgraded Ionian units. And then you don't always have to force Ionia. There are a lot of different ways to branch out of that. And then if you ever get a Kiana 2-star, just hard force Slayers or Gangplank. These 2 comps are so good right now. I have them both in the S tier, but pretty much any item component except for Rod can turn into something that's playable in Slayers. If you have Negatron, you could do Quicksilver and Kraken. If you have Tears, you could turn that into Hand of Justice. Negatron also turns into Bloodthirster. Belts turn into your utility items and Sterak's. So pretty much every item except for Rod, very, very good in Slayer comps. You could just hard force that with Kiana. Worst case, if you do get a Rod, just build a Hextech Gunblade. Not the worst item ever. And then after that, we have some conditional comps. If you get Deadlier Caps or Pandora's items, you can hard force Veigar. That definitely is viable to do. And if you get Prismatic Ticket or too much value, you can go for Bard Ixtal. And then some reroll checks out there. Zehen, Hero Augment, just hard force it. It's OP right now. And then if you have Titans components plus an Echo, hard force Echo reroll. And then if you are loose streaking isn't that great right now. You pretty much need to pray that you hit something that you have above. But worst case, you can play something like Warwick, but honestly, there are other patches with much better lose streak options, so it's definitely not an ideal world. But speaking of winning and lose streak, let's go to those sections down here, how to decide what to do on an opener. Pretty much, I built out a tier list of units and a lot of like sample boards you could play with, which have a lot of early and mid game comps that pretty much no tier list ever covers because tier lists just cover the end game comps. But let's cover how to decide on an opener first. So pretty much you have win streak and lose streak. Those are the 2 things you kind of want to go for. The only times you actually want to win streak is if you have both upgrades and strong items to build. So if we were talking about Ionia before, if you have a 2-star Jhin with the slammable on him, IE or Rageblade, then yeah, like you can definitely win streak, just put some frontline up there, and you should be doing pretty okay. It's obviously not guaranteed, but it definitely is something you should be going for. If you have a 2-star Shen and a 1-star Jhin, maybe you have a Sunfire Cape to slam. That would be a really good combo. You always want your upgraded unit with the item. Next, you want something like an item augment or a combat augment. Honestly, item augments are a bit better than combat augments for win streaking, but any power is good power. Lastly, you need to be scouting your lobby just to see if other people just have insanely cracked boards, in which case you might not be able to play for that win streak. Doesn't mean you can't commit to playing a strong board. You obviously still can, but it's just something to consider if you're going all in for the win streak. But yeah, for win streak openers, here's some items that are pretty good to start with, like Red Buff and Morello. Anti-heals in general are pretty good. They could also fit into a lot of the comps that you can go for from win streak starts. Rageblade's good if you have a bunch of tanks out there to stack. Adaptive, normally Tyr and Negatron don't build good early game items, but luckily combined they can build Adaptive, which pretty much fits on anyone on your team. So no matter what you're doing, no matter what units you upgrade, you always have an item for that unit. That's the power of Adaptive. Like, it's not the solo best item, obviously. There are much better items. Like if I have a Jhin, would I rather have Adaptive Helm or Infinity Edge? Obviously Infinity Edge, but Adaptive is good just to slam when you are win streaking because it's adaptive. You can put it on anyone. But pretty much if you could build any of the S or A tier items, you're going to be pretty good to go in terms of win streaking as long as the item fits on your unit at all. We'll cover that a little bit later, but some of the units that we want to be looking out for is going to be Kiana. She's probably like the queen of stage 2. If you hit a Kiana 2-star with a Briar 1-star, like you're gonna be winning a lot of rounds unless someone gets like 2-star 2 cost. Like I know that does happen sometimes. Some random person just hits a 2-star 2 cost right away, but like unless you're facing some super high roller, like Kiana is definitely gonna be pretty much dominating the early parts of the game. She does fall off later, that's the compensation effect, but in the beginning of the game, she is gonna be the best unit ever. After that, Ionians and Demacians are pretty good, and then it kind of falls off after that. Obviously, Viego's still good, but he's hard to fully win streak with because unless you got him really early, you have to sack around to unlock Yorick. And then it's hard to get other wardens working with Yorick, and you also need a quick striker. Those are going to be 2-cost units, so it's not reliable to win streak with Viego, but he is like a nice little special mention that is pretty good in the early game. In terms of 2-cost and 3-cost to hold on to, a lot of these have like good reroll lines, or they are just like solid units on their own, or you just get them and then you can just hard force a comp with them later on. So right now, like Nico, Sion are pretty strong. Oriana's really good in the Bard comp. Aphelios is a very good item holder because he fits into any AD plan and he could pretty much use any item. But 2 costs are mainly about the tanks, like the carries just aren't that great right now. But the reason why Nico is really good is because she has a lot of traits, so you can kind of splash her into a lot of different comps. And then Sion's really good because you can unlock LeBlanc. LeBlanc is actually really strong right now. Like you won't see her in many final comps, but in the early parts of the game, she is absolutely devastating. So pretty much what you can do is unlock Sion, get LeBlanc, throw some AP items onto her, and then pivot to some other comp later on in the game. This happens pretty much all the time, and then you can combine Sion with Dr. Mundo. They're both bruisers, and Mundo just happens to be one of the best 3-cost tanks in the game right now. So doing this weird like Invoker, Bruiser, Noxus stuff actually works out pretty well right now because you just get access to one of the best AP item holders who just honestly destroys the mid game. She does fall off later, so you do have to pivot out of it, but it's just something to keep in mind. Another good unit to mention is Zoe. She kind of does the same thing, but she doesn't have the requirements of LeBlanc. She's just a nice little Targun unit, so if you have an AP item holder, she's going to be very solid for that. And then some of the other units you can make work too. Like for example, if you get Vayne early from an orb drop, you definitely can hold on to her and do Demacia, but Demacia is not strong because of Vayne. They're strong because of Sona and Jarvan, but obviously Vayne can do work on her own. So that's kind of what you need to look out for. Another thing to look out for is Ahri does depend on her Ionia. If you get the stacking AD AP in Ionia with the Shojin or something like that, she is going to be S tier, so those are some of the other things to consider there. But lose streak openers, these are still okay, but you typically go for this when you have no direction, no or low upgrade count, maybe an econ augment, that's like the best time to do this, or if you like really scouted the lobby and made sure that no one else is kind of sacking. Normally that's looking out for Ixtals who are doing super lose streaks, but you definitely want to aim for a win streak first before doing a lose streak, but obviously the game decides for you, like you can't choose. So if you ever get no direction, you might be forced into a lose streak and then you have to pray for an econ augment. But right now, some comps to look out for when you are playing for lose streak is going to be the Ixtal comps. Warwick is pretty solid, Echo pretty solid, Singe Seraphine can kind of stabilize, and then Void Kaisa you can still do because you can stabilize in stage 3, and then Slayers also is possible. You just go for a fast 8 and go for things there. Some of the unit priority does change when you are going on a lose streak though, like the Ixtal units are good, and then Draven honestly is pretty solid also. The reason why Draven is good is because you can stabilize with him later and then have him farm you a lot of gold, and then you use that extra gold to do like a fast 8 so you have more gold on your roll down, or fast 9, you could skip it entirely in some scenarios depending on how hard you stabilized. But the main advantage you have when you are doing a lose streak is carousel priority. So normally team comps that really need best in slot items, like some of them require them more so than others. For example, if you're playing Ionia, Yunara, she really needs Infinity Edge and Rage Blade. The third item doesn't really matter. So if you already have the first two, carousel priority doesn't really matter too much. But if you have none of the components, then first of all, you probably should go a different comp. But if you do have carousel priority, it kind of makes up for that difference. But those are kind of things you want to look out for when you are doing a win or lose streak. Let's cover the generic AD and AP openers. These are going to be pretty useful. Some of them are going to be pretty standard, like the one you see here, generic AD, Ionia with Kiana. This one works out really well. You could use Jhin as well. Like obviously you're not going to get these exact units in every one of your games. These are just kind of sample boards that are a little bit different than what you'd normally see. Like obviously Jhin in an Ionia comp makes complete sense as an item holder, but if you just have a Kiana and you're like, hey, I got items that I could use to go for Ionia, like you still can play her. Like you don't have to marry Kiana, you don't have to play her the rest of the game. You can just play her and then ditch her later once you hit stage 3. And honestly, with Ionia, with Slayers built into the trait with Yasuo, this comp makes a lot of sense. Another way to play Kiana is in Noxus. Noxus is really good because obviously Briar's built into that, so you can play with Briar. Briar also really works well with Juggernaut, so sometimes you have like a random Blitzcrank 2-star. You could play that instead of the Shen, you know? Like you don't have to play Bruiser. So that's kind of how you can play around Kiana without just going straight up Slayers and like hard forcing Slayers. You could play these and still play Ionia and Noxus comps. Next up we have is Draven. Draven's really good as a ranged item holder, obviously. So if you ever have a Rage Blade, play him with Quick Striker, and you could use this comp to generate a ton of gold. Other AD item holders is going to be another version of Draven with Void Draven. You could pretty much give him Belveth items and use the Void to stack up to get Rift Herald, because all the Belveth and Slayer comps, they all use Rift Herald. But you could use him as an item holder instead of Kog'Maw, because Kog'Maw doesn't really use any of these items well, and Rek'Sai is too squishy up front to use something like a Kraken Slayer. So pretty much you could run Draven in like the other like comps up here, or you could play him just with some random Void units and do that instead. Next, we have Aphelios. He could pretty much work with any frontline. Like it doesn't have to be Illaoi Shen, it could be literally Defenders, Bruisers, Juggernauts. I forget all the tank traits, but literally any of the tank traits work with Aphelios. That's the greatest part about him. And then you can pivot into pretty much any comp you want. If you want to play like AD Kai'Sa, for example, just make sure you have 2 Void in stacking the whole time so that you can get Rift Herald. If you're playing for Slayers, obviously you still need the Voids for Belveth, but you could easily put Belveth items on Aphelios. He could use all of them, like pretty much the same items up here that you see on Draven, Aphelios can use. Or if you want to play like Ionia's, Aphelios can hold Yunara items. He pretty much holds anything, which is why he's really so great. I think he is pretty underrated. And if you ever get like solid random frontline upgrades, like a 1-star Aphelios, definitely still can be a solid item holder if you don't get like a 2-star Jhin in Ionia. So definitely don't sleep on Aphelios. He's going to be making you a lot of LP gains. So next up we have are going to be the generic AP builds. So obviously we talked about LeBlanc. You want to be using LeBlanc. Pretty much any Invoker plus LeBlanc and some frontline going to be really solid. Only go for this if you have Sion, obviously, because you need Sion to unlock LeBlanc. After that, like long shot defenders, you could have like Kog'Maw hold AP items, Caitlyn hold AD items. This one works out really well if you want to go for a Kai'Sa builds, because Caitlyn can hold the AD items, Kog'Maw can hold the AP items. It just depends what items you have that game. And then Kai'Sa eventually plays with Ziggs. So if you built a Rage Blade plus you have attack damage items, like Kai'Sa can use the attack damage items and then Ziggs can use the Rage Blade later. Obviously that's like super far down the line. And obviously you don't have this many items in the early part of the game, but these are just sample items that you can kind of slam early and use later in these types of team comps. After that, we have Orianna. Orianna can just use pretty much any AP item, pair her with Piltover, Invokers with Demacia works. You could also use her in Freljord because you could use Anivia plus Sejuani. That gives you both Invoker and Defender to pair with Vi and Orianna. And then just add a third Freljord to get the Freljord buff. So you could use that in a lot of different situations too. Orianna is just a solid item holder early on. But pretty much this opener is good if you do not have enough Demacian units upgraded to feel confident about Demacia. Because again, obviously, if you are going full out Demacia, you have like the 2-star Jarvan, the 2-star Sona, then you could easily use this variation instead. Next build up we have is the Zoe plus Frontline, and Zoe pretty much fills in the same gap as Aphelios, except for AP users. She pretty much uses anything AP, and you can use this to get into Freljord Seraphine, Targon Aesol, Rise Ziggs, Belfast 9, Arcanist comps, even AP Kai'Sa if you really want to, if you have the Void in there. But pretty much those are going to be the comps you're going to be looking out for. By the way, for all these openers, I do have some of their comps listed out at the bottom here. This will all be available on the website bunnymuffins.lol/openers. But pretty much this section is for if you have no real general direction for win streak or lose streak, so then you just pick AD or AP and then try to fulfill whatever conditions they have there. Let's go up a little bit though. I want to talk about augments. So there are some augments that you can just take and just hard force a comp and do pretty well with. The first one's going to be too much value. You pretty much just force Bard Ixtal every game. You just play a lot of 2-cost units in this comp. Like, you just need to play 4 of them, and you just get a ton of rerolls. Like, the first turn you play this, you can, like, level up and then play 4 2-cost units. You just get 2 rerolls that turn, and then 2 rerolls the next turn, and then you just get Bard for free. It's really, really good. You pretty much just get 4 gold per turn for the rest of the game from a gold augment, which is absolutely bonkers. If you compare it to something like Slammin', it gives you like 2 econ every game, right? Like 2 XP. But this one gives you 4 gold worth of rerolls every single turn. Absolutely bonkers nuts augment. Next one up we have is Prismatic Ticket. You can pretty much force any reroll comp with Prismatic Ticket, but Bard Ixtal works out really well again because it just gives you a lot of rerolls. And if you ever get a reroll quest, you just complete it for free. Honor Roll is really good for both Bard and for Sona. Patience is a virtue, another way to play for Bard. Next up we have is some other comps. We have Branching Out, Spreading Roots, Legion of Threes, and Trait Tree. Whenever you don't know what to do, pretty much take one of these emblem augments and it just gives you directions. Like if you have a bunch of random upgraded units and you're like, great, I got some upgrades, but I don't know what I'm doing this game because they don't match up together. Let's say you have like Blitzcrank 2 and Nivea 2 or something like that. I'm just saying random stuff, but not a good combo, right? But luckily what you can do is just take Branching Out, put the emblem on one of the units, whichever one makes sense, and then just go that trait because that unit's going to get buffed up from the trait and benefit from whatever's on your team comp, and then you could still use them for their upgraded stats. So that's really good time to kind of use one of these. At the same time, when should you not take these? Pretty much if you already have your game plan set up already. Like if you have Gwinsu Slam, Shen 2, Jin 2 with Ionia already, like yeah, don't take Branching Out because that's literally ruining your great start. Next up we have is Bringer of Ruin. Very, very good Noxus comp. Pretty much Noxus is just really good in the early and mid game. It kind of sucks late game, but with this you just dominate everyone early and then you could get into like level 9 type of stuff. But it pretty much gives you instant access to Scion, which can unlock LeBlanc, and then you just play as many Noxus as you can. You pretty much rush 7 Noxus as soon as possible, and then Otacon just pretty much kills everything. After that we have Ixtal Expeditionist. You can do any type of Ixtal comp. It's better for the regular one and not the Bard one, so just play like the regular Brock Ixtal with Expeditionist. Unleash Steel, this one is going to be really good in a lot of comps. Like let's do some data checking on teamfight.lol. Go to items and then we could just type in Darken over here. So pretty much we have the bow, scythe, aegis, and staff. Staff people don't really use that often. The one that's most common is bow and scythe. Bow is really, 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 really good on both Belveth and Yunara. I'm sure it works on a couple of other people too. Not really, pretty much just legendaries. Apparently Renekton is really good with it, but that's just because Renekton's good with everything. Scythe is really good on a lot of melee carries, so like Mbessa makes a lot of sense. And obviously legendaries make great use of it too. So pretty much you could go Mbessa or Yasuo if you take the Scythe, or you could go for Darken Bow with Belveth Yunara. Those are going to be your 2 options there. Apparently Vayne can use it too. I've never tried that, but apparently she can make it work. But with Unleashed from Steel, if you ever have any upgraded unit, just auto click it and then force one of these 2 comps. It's really, really, really strong, and it really makes these comps shine a lot harder because either your primary or secondary carry gets absolutely cracked. Like Mbessa with this item, I promise you will be demolishing a lot of boards. After that, we have Portable and Living Forge. Both these augments are really good to get direction. Pretty much all you have to do is data check your items again, just go to artifacts over here and then see what comps to go for. Like after you get your thing, just sort by average placement and then see what you get. I'm not saying always pick the highest one, but pick the one that makes the most sense for your board. As long as it's not like all the way at the bottom, you're gonna be good to go. So if you see something like, oh, maybe I wanna go for Flicker Blades. Okay, then you just click this little button, you see what to go for. Like, okay, Yunara uses Flicker Blades, Belveth, Kaisa, Jinx, apparently even Callista can use this. So then you just go Flicker Blades, go one of these comps, and then just hard force them. Like, you're gonna do fine. No matter what, you're gonna get a solid option, but also make sure it fits on your board too. Like, look at your other options. Like, if you have a Rage Blade already, you might not want to get Flicker Blades. You want to get something else. Maybe you want to get like Fishbones with that if you already have a Rage Blade, because Fishbones gives a lot of attack damage to complement the attack speed. So maybe you want to go in a different direction there. So there's always like some weird things to look out for. But for the most part, just make sure it's averaging better than 4.0. Click the item and see who works best with it. Like Mitten's really good with like a bunch of the melee carries. Probably want to go for that. Next one up we have is 9 lives. So if you are weak with this augment, aim to spike on stage 3-2. So you can play some reroll comps that's really good with that. Echo or Bard Ixtal tend to be really good with 9 lives because they make use of the power spike very, very effectively. So that's something you could take there. I know a lot of people don't like taking 9 lives because they don't know what comp to go for with it. So hopefully this helps you out for that. Worth the wait is pretty good. There are a couple of different units that you could get that are pretty nice. So Nico's really good because you get Nidalee for free. Echo is really good because he's a reroll comp, obviously. Same with Yasuo. Scion 3 is incredibly tanky, and you can kind of do like the snowball effect with the LeBlanc type of stuff. For the other ones, like A tier, B tier, C, and D, like they're not as good, but they are still playable. You don't always have to chase 4-star 2-cost units, You could always just use them as getting a free upgrade, using them as an item holder, and then selling the extra copies. And then obviously, like, you still can wait to get them 3-star. Like, it's pretty easy to do that, but pretty much the 4-star is mainly bait unless you get something very specific. Next one up, we have Seraphim Staff. This one's really good for Sona reroll. Like, pretty much you just make 2 Archangels, so if you have any Sonas on your bench with Seraphim Staff offered, like just Hard Forces comp is really nice. Infinity Protection, this one's really good on Slayers and Warwick. Deadlier Caps, you could force Vagar, and then if you don't have any direction, like augments such as Delayed Start, 2-Trick, Birthday Reunion, pretty much anything that gives you units to play around, that's going to be nice to take if you have no direction at all. So hopefully this video helped you figure out the openers on this patch, because again, like, I think a lot of this patch is about the openers. Like, obviously, like, the tier list still matters, but you need to be able to play the early game and navigate the early game before you get to the desired comps on the tier list. And I think this opener guide is going to be a very useful resource for a lot of people out there. By the way, if you have any suggestions, since this is the first iteration I have of this on the site, let me know how you want to see this presented, like how you think this might help you out a little more, because ultimately this is going to be a resource for everyone and it can only get better from here. So let me know down in the comments what you think. So my favorite part about this video is that I show you a lot of the units that people don't really think about and how to use them, because again, there are such things as early game, mid game, and late game units, and we really just focus on the late game whenever we look at a tier list. We never really focus on the early and mid game. So hopefully this kind of bridges that gap, because every unit is useful in TFT, believe it or not. It just depends when and how you use it. But that's gonna be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this, and I'll see you all in the next one.